were simply chariots to God. They had no ego on their own. A chariot is something that it just follows the rider wherever the rider decides. That's where the chariot goes, like a car. A car that has its own will outside of the driver's will, you better get it checked out at a mechanic, because the driver is the one that commands the wheels and the car, the vehicle, for it to go. So that's what the forefathers were. They were simply vehicles and chariots, in the words of Tanya, to do God's will. That was their whole purpose. Their whole living, their whole life was simply doing God's will. And as a reward for that, God inherited their children and their offspring with that deep love that is just innate. So the reason why this is relevant in chapter 18 is because what we've been learning up until now is that to be a Beinoni, it requires just the idea of controlling yourself, impulse control. But at times it may be hard to have that full impulse control. So in order to alleviate that pressure, we said it's time to work on some meditation, to get into your mind that will develop a feeling of the heart. And when your feelings are on board, it's much easier to practice something when you are feeling the enjoyment in it. We all know that you can do a mitzvah, but you do it as a chore, and it's soulless. There's no soul in it. Or you could do it with emotion. You could do it with feeling. You could do it with kavanah. It transforms the whole mitzvah. So that's what we've been learning in 16 and 17 was about putting your mind into it, because we are intellectual beings by birth. Actually, the way that Tanya says it in last week's chapter was, we have in us a head, and that head is allowing us to think. And with a little bit of intelligence, you could meditate on God's greatness, and that causes your feelings to be developed. But even if your feelings are not going to be that great because your meditation is not that perfect, even a little bit of an appreciation is enough. That's what we've been learning in 16 and 17. But here is the message of Tanya. Really, chapter 18, friends, is a universal message. It's a powerful message that tells us that a Jew is a Jew no matter what. That even if you can't get your mind on board and you can't find the right access points of God, because you don't know God, and you have to have a little bit of a background in order to know what you should be meditating on. You have to have a little bit of an appreciation to know what to think about. So a person may feel, learning chapter 16 and 17, I'm not there yet. I don't know anything about God. I can't have any meditation. I don't know how to think. So here comes chapter 18 and says, okay, don't worry. We have you covered as well, because every single one of us have an inheritance of Abraham, of our forefathers. And that inheritance is something automatic. Just from being born into it, you already have it. There's a beautiful story, some of you may have seen it on video, of George Rohr, who's a philanthropist to many, many Jewish causes. He supports the rejuvenation of Judaism in the Soviet Union in Russia, and as well as Chabad on campus he's very involved in. His name is George Rohr. In the late 80s, he came to the Rebbe to report to the Rebbe, and you see it on video by dollars, when the Rebbe was giving out dollars. He reports to the Rebbe just after Rosh Hashanah, exactly this week, that he was so proud to report to the Rebbe that he has, for the new year, let me put this, there you go, maybe you can see me a little bigger. For the new year, he has arranged in his synagogue in Manhattan a beginner's minyan. And this beginner's minyan was specifically, he tells the Rebbe, for Jews with no background, meaning they don't know how to read Hebrew, they don't know anything, but they could also feel very present during services. So he arranged an entirely different style minyan, and he called it the beginner's minyan. As part of his synagogue that he was a member of in Manhattan. And the Rebbe was a little taken, and the George Rohr thought maybe the Rebbe didn't hear, so he repeats it a little louder. Rebbe, I want you to know we started a beginner's minyan. The Rebbe looks at him, and you see it on video, and he says, how could you call them Jews with no background? Every single Jew is the son or the daughter of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. Of course, they have the richest background. Of course, they have a background. So each one of us, chapter 18 tells us, we all have this background of our forefathers and foremothers, and as a result, we have this natural love for God that is already inside of us. So, and this is applying chapter 18 is whether you're scholarly or whether you're ignorant, whether you're a very observant or you've observed nothing, and you've done many negative things that you feel puts you back a little bit, and you feel sinful, etc. Even then, you will fully be able to access this, because at the end of the day, when there's a crisis, your connection with God will be strong, and that's a fact that as a Jew, the only reason why we allow ourselves to do things that we perhaps would be inappropriate is we don't think it's that bad. We rationalize that it's okay. God doesn't really care if I'm doing this or that. But when it comes to something we feel that God would care, when our life is on the line of our Jewishness and we feel that if I do something like that, I would be severing my connection with God, you would never choose to sever it. You would right away stand strong. And like we've seen many, many times throughout Jewish history. Okay, so that's where I think we're up to in chapter 18. If I'm not mistaken, we are on page 212. Someone want to correct me if I don't have that right? 212 and 213. Does that sound right to everyone?
I have 214.
214?
I have 214, starting at a higher soul.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so we are in the middle of learning a really Kabbalistic idea about the different worlds and Sephirot. Sephirot, so just to explain this in short, there's just like we have 10 soul powers, God actually mirrors that with creating the world with 10 divine lights, 10 divine energies. In Hebrew, they're called Sephirah, is one, or Sephirot is plural. And what those are 10 divine lights of how God brings his infinite light and channels it into a finite light to be able to be accessed in the world. Mirroring these 10 shining lights, we have our 10 soul powers. But that's how God interfaces himself with the world. And we have 10 divine lights, 10 soul lights. And also there's 4 broad worlds. There's 4 general worlds. Now, each one of these 4 worlds have these 10 divine lights. So, for example, we've been learning a lot about Chachma, Bina, and Das. The way we've been learning it is how we think, how we're wired to think, from the flash of the idea, the inquiry, to the cognition, to the recognition, the Chachma, Bina, and the Das. But God also utilizes his wisdom in creating the world and fashioning the world. So God has his access point of Chachma in the world. But now, which world is that Chachma in? So there's 4 general worlds, 4 Kabbalistic, it's called 4 olamot, 4 worlds. Now, there's 4, one on top of the other. So the highest of worlds is called the world of emanation. Then there's the world of creation. Then there's the world of formation. And then there's the world of action. In Hebrew, it's Atzilut. Then there's Olam HaBriyah, Olam HaYetzirah, and finally, Olam HaAsiyah. You guessed it, we right now working in this world is the world of action. That's where we have mitzvahs to fulfill. But our souls come from a higher world. Which world? That depends. Some worlds come all the way up from Atzilut, the world of emanation, which is the first place that God's light is being channeled into something finite. There's some souls that come from a lower world called creation, the world of creation. And in fact, that's where the souls, the angels, the spirit of angels come from. But let's say Moses, he came from the world of emanation, the world of Atzilut. And even in the world of Atzilut, remember I told you there's 10 divine lights? So the soul comes from a different level of those divine lights. Some souls come from a lower divine light, which is called, let's say, Malchut. But some come from a much higher, the highest of divine lights, which would be, which is going to be the highest, which is what we're going to be learning about today. So it says, let's say Moses, our leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, his soul came from the world of Atzilut, and in the world of Atzilut, it came from the highest divine light of Atzilut, the highest Sephirah, which was Chachma. But also, in every other world, there's also these 10 divine lights, 10 Sephirot, and our souls come from a different world and a different light of that world. And just in English, the word Sephirah comes from the word sapir, which means to shine and to be fully illuminated. And that is, like in English, the word sapphire. It's a similar word, something very bright, very shining, like sapphire. Okay, so we will continue. I'll pull it up on the screen. And beware just for a second, it's going to make a little, sorry about that. Okay. The Tanya notes briefly that your soul level can ascend throughout your life. Each individual begins life according to the soul's initial level in the Sephirahs within the four worlds. And then his soul can ascend the Sephirahs and the worlds during his life, following his good behavior. So this is amazing. You are given a certain level of soul, and that's what you start off with. But you could rise and elevate the level of your soul during your lifetime with good behavior to be sourced in a higher location. So you're not stuck only on that level. You can actually raise yourself up through mitzvot, good deeds, and acts of kindness for the source of your soul to be actually higher, emanating from a higher place. So this is very Kabbalistic ideas. It's taken from a book called the Book of Reincarnation, Shar Hagilgulim. It's a heavy-duty book. They actually translated it in English. It was translated, if I'm not mistaken, by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who's actually my namesake. I'm named after, my middle name Aryeh is named after Aryeh Kaplan, who wrote some incredible books. One of them, I think one of his first is Jewish Meditation. He wrote that in the 70s. He died actually in the mid-80s, but he had a PhD in psychology, and he was a rabbi that translated many, many books. One of them was this Book of Reincarnation. And in the Book of Reincarnation, that's thousands of years old, it writes like this: every person must rectify the whole spectrum of Sephirot in Asiya before a soul can receive from Yetzirah. Yetzirah is the world above Asiya, the world of action. Since Yetzirah is greater than all of Asiya. Similarly, in order for a soul to receive from Beriah, a person needs to rectify every part of a soul from Yetzirah, after which a soul can receive from Beriah. It is insufficient for him to rectify only the particular place in which his soul root is grounded. So what we see from here is that during our reincarnation process, we have to rectify every part of our soul. But the way our soul is in the world of action, the world of Asiya, is different. So first the soul has to work its way up. Start with working on the world of Asiya and rectifying it there. And then after it's fully perfected the needs of that world, it'll rise itself up to the higher worlds, etc. So, and while we may not all have lofty souls, they are all at least from one of the 10 holy Sephirot, without exception. So while some of our souls may be from a higher source, we all come from the holy divine lights. So even the most irreverent and sinful Jews will cause a holy soul to be endowed to their children through their act of conception, right? Even if it's the parents are not people that are thinking good or doing good during their day, yet they access a holy soul, at the very least from the lowest level, soul level, nefesh of nefesh, from the lowest of the 10 holy Sephirot, malchus, and from the lowest of the 4 worlds, Asiya. This nefesh of malchus being the lowest rung in the sacred world of Asiya. Okay, I'm just going to explain this a little bit. It's Kabbalistic, and it would be easier if I was just doing this on a whiteboard. But take it as it is. There are 4 worlds. There's 10 divine lights that are in each world. So really there's 40 divine lights, 10 per world. They're the same set. They're called the same, but obviously a different power of light in each world. The higher the world, the closer it is to God's infinity, the more deep and powerful the light is. But there's also, just like there's Chachma in Atzilut, there's also Chachma of Beriah, and there's also Chachma of Asiya, and there's also Chachma of Yetzirah, in all the 4 worlds. Now, there's also, just one last part, our soul itself that are receiving from these different sources, our souls have different chambers, different parts to our soul. We all have the deepest part of our soul that's called Yechida. It's the holiest, deepest part. Our souls have 5 parts. In fact, on Yom Kippur, coming up in just a few days on Sunday night, on Yom Kippur, we have 5 prayers throughout the 24 hours of Yom Kippur. It's actually the only time of the year that we pray 5 times. corresponding to the 5 times the Kohen Gadol would enter the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodashim on Yom Kippur, we pray 5 times. On Shabbat and holidays, we pray 4 times. On a regular day like today, we pray 3 times. Because there's different levels of souls that are accessed based on the days of the year. On a regular day, we access the 3 lower components of our soul. In the Hebrew, they're called Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Nefesh means like soul. Ruach is spirit, and Neshama also means a breath of soul, breath of life. Those are 3 components of our soul that we access on a daily basis. From our biological, our emotional, and our intellectual makeup, we access those different levels of soul. On Shabbat, we have access to the 4th higher level, which is called Chaya, life. And on Yom Kippur, we access the deepest. It's called Yechida, which means oneness, alone, united with God fully. And on Yom Kippur, that's what happens. Really, in truth, we could access that Yechida on any given day, but it takes more work through more teshuvah. But on Yom Kippur, it's just there, just fasting on the day of Yom Kippur, not even showing up to synagogue, just fasting and spending the day in a prayerful, solemn way. Already you access that level of soul that is just powerful, Yechida. And so even people that are sinful, that's actually the words, or irreverent, they couldn't care less. They don't know anything about God, and they don't want to know anything about God. And they bring a child into this world. They're bringing actually a holy soul, because even the lowest chamber of souls is coming from the world of Asiya, on the lower Sephirah, which is going to be called Malchus, from the lowest level of soul, which is called Nefesh. So that's what he's saying here. Even then, it's still a holy soul. I hope I didn't lose you. You could definitely unmute yourself and ask any questions. It might be harder to type these Kabbalistic ideas in. But let's just see the summary and see if it makes any sense. In summary, while accepting the hierarchy of souls described in the Kabbalah, the Tanya has nevertheless democratized all souls in the sense that they are all rooted in pure divine energy. The 10 holy Sephirahs. So even if there's maybe a hierarchy, Moses' soul is sourced on a higher level than ours, but still we are coming from holy souls. And we could rise up through our actions in this world to a higher level of soul. However low a soul's root may be, its direct connection with God will never be severed. All of the patriarchs' descendants merit a soul which in one way or another is rooted in one of the 10 holy Sephirot. There are no exceptions. So this is a really comforting idea. A person may feel, oh my gosh, look at my childhood, look at my background, look at my ancestry. There's no hope in my pursuit of holiness. There's no hope in my pursuit of Torah and observance. And comes over here the Tanya and says, yes, there is a hierarchy of souls, and there are certain souls that are more spiritually attuned, and there's this description of souls that come from a higher place. Yet every single soul is holy, because it's coming from the 10 divine Sephirot, the 10 holy lights of God. So because we're coming from these 10 holy souls, we're all rooted from these 10 holy souls. That's the connection we have with God, regardless. As once we are born into a family that's a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a Jewish family, we have this by nature. We have this automatic, which is an amazing, amazing thing. There are no exceptions. This provides us with an answer to question C above. So the question was, how is it possible to inherit love? That was one of the great questions we asked. Love is something you have to develop. So the answer is, it is not the emotion itself we inherit, but a soul which is predisposed to love God due to its lofty source in the divine Sephirahs. So it's something that we have already natural to have that love disposition for God, because it's something we inherit. So, and the reason why we inherit is because our souls are coming from these divine Sephirahs. I will also mention, because in case it's going to come up as a question, it's a beautiful thing that there's some notes together with this Tanya and elsewhere as well, that these divine lights, the reason why conversion is something so serious is because those souls that are have that inspiration or that passion to convert to become Jewish. In the beginning is actually difficult, and they're not really pushed away, but they're almost felt you don't have to convert. It's not something, Judaism is not we don't proselytize. It's not something we need to have more numbers. The Torah already said, "Atam hama'at mikol amim." Torah already said we are among the fewest. We're not the biggest of nations in terms of numbers. But yet, once a person decides to convert, what we realize is that that spark of soul was actually there at Sinai as well. It's actually a Jewish soul, and they already have this love as well. And when they go to the mikvah, that love is now fully accessed and fully alive. So it's something that they inherit as well. It's not something that they're kind of stuck without and they have to make do. No. As soon as they convert, that love is there because they already have that power of soul that was there at Sinai. It just maybe over the course of generations, that soul got lost into other nations, but now it has that power and that yearn to come back. So these divine souls are there. It's natural. It's real. It's inherited from love, from this love of Abraham, and that's something that we all have. So this answers the question: how is soul inherited? Let's pause for questions. And,
yeah, Rabbi, I got a question.
Sure.
Concerning the convert, right? Having the spark of the Jewish soul,
Yep.
Wouldn't that go back to the garden when Adam and Eve, when God breathed life into them or gave them the breath of life, and then therefore pretty close to, or pretty much everybody in the world has access to that? True or false?
That every single person has access to this love of God?
To the divine soul, because
yeah.
God breathed his soul within them.
So absolutely, Adam and Eve were not Jewish, right? They were just the first humans, and from their soul comes all the souls of life. So Abraham's soul came from them, as well as all the other many souls. But what we're saying here, and that's absolutely true, they every single person has a relationship with God. Every single person has a natural connection with God. That they just, and by the way, this idea of mind controlling over emotion is something natural, right? It wasn't Jewish to be able to control. But this love that we're talking about here was a gift that was given to Avram, and Avram was Jewish, and that's given through to his descendants this predisposition of love of God. So while yes, everyone has a soul, but reaching these divine Sephirahs of soul and climbing up the echelon all the way up, that is something Jewish. That's because that's something inherent.
Right, Abraham. Yeah, Abraham is the first Hebrew. I was just talking about, you know, when you look at the I don't know, the DNA of humans.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's, to me, that's how I justify how a convert has the spark of the Jewish soul.
So that's actually, it's a good question. When it comes to DNA and everything, you know, a lot of people now are doing 23andMe or all these different swabs and research. So, and it's actually very interesting. I have people that come and they say that I'm a Cohen because they were able to trace in their DNA that they come from a Cohen, they have Cohen tribe in them. So they want that aliyah. But it's interesting, it actually doesn't go, because a person's mother could be a Cohen, or let's say Adina's dad was a Levi, but the kahuna, the Cohen, the tribal lineage goes by the paternal, goes by the father, and the Jewish lineage goes by the mother. So it's actually more, even though a person may have, let's say, Jewish DNA, you know, some people could have 90% Finnish and 2% whatever, and you know, a couple percent Jewish. It doesn't make them having this natural love for God developed from the divine Sephirahs. It's something more innate of the divine Sephirahs that goes through it's more of a soulful thing than a DNA thing that you could trace in the blood.
Excuse me, could you just repeat that the Jewish lineage comes from the mother and tribal comes from the father?
Yeah. So we know that in Judaism, we have different tribes. Originally, we were 12. 10 of them, unfortunately, got lost. But what we do know is that we still keep till today the Cohen, the Levis, and the Yisrael. It's one of the reasons why we have 3 matzahs at the Seder. There's many connections to it. But the Aaron, who was the first Cohen, his his lineage of and ancestry is the Cohen tribe. So there's people that are, if their last name is Katz, it almost certainly means that they're a Cohen, because Katz actually stands for, in Hebrew, Cohen Tzedek, righteous Cohen. And of course, if someone's last name is Cohen, and there's other last names that it's almost certain that that person is a Cohen. But what's interesting is if a person, even if they, so the law is, Isabel, that the tribal lineage, for a person to know if they're a Cohen, a Levi, or Yisrael, that follows the father. So let's say my father is a Cohen, my father is a Yisrael, so I'm a Yisrael. Even if my mother was from a Cohen tribe, for the tribal lineage to know which tribe you come from, that follows the father. But for the Jewish lineage to know if a person is Jewish, that makes no difference what tribe they're from, that follows the mother. So it's an interesting combination in Judaism of tribal lineage versus that goes paternal to Jewish lineage that goes maternal. Okay, so let's continue now. So this is going to be some really powerful ideas. It's a little Kabbalistic, we're still getting, but the message that we're trying to get to is going to be really, really nice. So let's see, section 3, 215 if you're looking at a book, or on the top of the page on the Kindle, and it goes like this: the root of dormant love. Now we turn to question A. What is the root of this inherited love? By what mechanism does it come to us? The answer will be based on the idea that a sacred system is characterized by cohesiveness and interconnectedness. Every component is profoundly connected with every other component. So there's going to be a connectiveness and cohesion. Let's find out how this works. Even if a person has a soul from the lowest of the Sephirahs and from the lowest of the worlds, like we were saying before, from the world of Asiya, and from the Sephirah of Malchus, which is like the lowest of all the divine lights, nevertheless, since it is ultimately rooted in one of the 10 holy Sephirahs, it contains an element of all the other Sephirahs inside it. As a cohesive spiritual system, every Sephirah contains within it a component of all the other 10 Sephirahs. In this way, the Sephirahs find each other relatable, even if they represent opposing energies, since each Sephirah can always connect with the element of the other within itself. So I just want to explain this. I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment just to explain this. As I said before, we have 10 Sephirahs. I think this is a very Kabbalistic idea, but also very relatable. So I just want to see how clear this is. A person has 10 Sephirahs, that's natural. We have 10 Sephirahs, and that mirrors God's 10 Sephirahs of how he emanates his light and interfaces with the world. One of these Sephirahs, for example, is chesed, which is kindness, love. That's a natural feeling that we have as part of our emotions. We have an emotion to love. We have an emotion to fear, to respect, to be disciplinary, and to judge. Which one is stronger? So some people have more of a dominant love. It's not that discipline is not important. It's just that love by them is stronger. But now what we're learning now is that each one is interconnected, which means each one of the 10 Sephirahs have in it all the other 9 Sephirahs. So there's discipline and loving kindness. Because you love that person so much, you're going to be more disciplined with them. That's part of your love. So it's the discipline of love. So it's actually a connectedness. Let's just take the easy word. It's a connection, a harmony between the 2 Sephirahs. Each Sephirah includes within it the other 9 Sephirahs. So let's say one of the Sephirahs is the ability to have endurance and ambition. In that, you could also have the humility, which is another spiritual component. But because they're interconnected, they're interconnected. Each one has in it and complements itself with the other 9. There's an interconnectedness. The point of what he's trying to get to is that even if a soul, my soul or your soul, is coming from a spiritually lower level of the 10 Sephirahs, but in truth, each one is connected to the other 9. Each one has in it the components of they're cohesive with the other 9. So don't feel that I'm this and not those. You're actually complemented in your soul. You have also the 9 Sephirahs around the sphere that is more dominant. So it's something that's part of you. And they're all interconnected. Because remember, these are spiritual ideas. Souls are not this and not that. Souls are all interconnected. Souls are not tangible, and hence are able to be interconnected. They're all locked together. So it's a spiritual idea. It's understanding that in the spiritual realms, everything is connected. And therefore, even if I have a soul from a lower level, realize that in those components, you also have the other 9 higher Sephirahs as well. So yeah, when we count the Sephirah, we work on all the Sephirot, almost all. We work on the 7 emotional Sephirahs. If you remember, we learned there's 10 total. 3 are the intellectual ones, Chachma, Bina, and Das. The inquiry, the cognition, and the recognition of an idea. And then you have the 7 emotional. These 7 emotions is what we're working on during the 7-week period between Passover and Shavuot. It's 49 days, 7 full weeks. During that time, we're working on each midah, on each one of these 7 feelings and within our heart, within our soul. And what are we working on within those 7? We're working on all 7 parts of it. So there's 7 components of each sphere, right? Because I said they're all interconnected. So a total you're working on in your emotions, you're working on 49 levels. There's a beautiful book by Rabbi Simon Jacobson called, I call it the 49. It's like a little booklet. I'm sure some of you guys have it. I forgot what it's called. And if someone wants, I could send it to them after. It's working every day, 49 days of the Omer, working on a different character of that day's Sephirah, how they're all interconnected. It's really, really nice. Yeah, so let's continue. I hope that was clear. Definitely some heavy duty ideas. So now we're gonna, he's trying to get to is that every single soul is really connected with all higher levels. They're all spiritually connected. So a person could work their way up to the highest of levels, which is quite awesome. We're on the bottom paragraph of the Kindle. Due to this fundamental interconnectedness, even the lowest sphere of the lowest world, which is Malchus of Asiya, contains within it the highest sphere of that world, Chachma of Asiya. The principle of interconnectedness provides a bridge, not only between the spheres within a specific world, but also across one spiritual world to another. In this case, Chachma of Asiya, the highest sphere of the lowest world, is connected with Chachma in all the other worlds, including the highest world, Atzilus. I think that's what he's about to explain. And within the highest sphere of the lowest world, which is Chachma of Asiya, we find the veiled presence of the highest world. First through Chachma within Malchus of Atzilus, the highest Sephirah as it is found within the lowest sphere of the highest world, in which is found Chachma of Atzilus, the highest Sephirah of the lowest world. Let's see if I could pull up, I wanted to, I was working on something before. Okay, no, it's not coming up. I was going to show you guys what the spheres look like. Hold on 1 second, everyone. Let's see if this works. Okay, cool. I'm going to send everyone a link after, but I just wanted for now. You know, okay, if everyone is okay, I'm just going to share my screen for, oh, could you guys see my screen? Could you see the 10 Sephirahs up on the screen or no? No? Okay, so let me stop sharing. Let me switch something around over here. Tell me, are you able to see the screen now? Great. So these are the 10 Sephirahs. I hope that makes sense. The 10 spheres are Chachma, which is wisdom, Bina, understanding, Das, knowledge. So those are the 3 more cognitive ones. And then we have the 7 emotional ones, which are kindness, strength, beauty, victory, splendor, foundation, and kingship. In Hebrew, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. The lowest of them is Malchus. Now, these 10 Sephirahs exist in 4 different worlds. So even if someone is having a soul that is from the level of Malchus, of the lowest world, really that level of Malchus is connected to the level of Chachma, because they're all interconnected. And this Chachma is connected with Chachma. It's bridged with Chachma of all the higher worlds. So whether this Chachma is on the lowest world, it's actually connected with Chachma of the highest world, which is where the soul of Moses comes from. So in truth, what we're trying to explain here in Tanya is that even the lowest of souls is really connected with the highest of souls and can make its way up and work to reach that level. Okay, I hope that was clear. And we'll go back to the Tanya.
Rabbi, I have a question. So when you say you can work to reach that highest level, does that mean just in terms of like how you're being in the world or studying Torah, or what would one do to work on that?
So there's different mitzvahs that we have to do during our lifetime, and actually reincarnation, which we've touched upon in the past, is actually because in one lifetime we can't fulfill all mitzvahs. So there's certain mitzvahs that we have to do in the world of action. There's certain mitzvahs that we have to do more in a more meditative world. There's some mitzvahs that only apply to a woman. There's certain, let's say, mikvah. There's mitzvahs that only apply to a man, let's say tefillin. So in one lifetime, you can accomplish both of those mitzvahs and enhance and raise up the level of soul to a higher level after it accomplishes everything in one world. So it's about deepening your connection with God, which is exactly, as you said, Maddie, through the study of Torah and through the connection through mitzvahs. And we connect our souls with God on different layers and different levels. So it's primarily through Torah and mitzvah, and the difference we make in our world, and then we rise ourselves up to a higher level. Sometimes we reach it we plateau during our lifetime. Sometimes we reach it during another lifetime, but it's all one soul's accomplishments in the world.
Thank you so much. I have 2 other questions. I don't know if you have time.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the questions is about reincarnation. That in the in Judaism, do you believe that you can come back or reincarnate as a man or a woman at different times?
Yeah, and actually, specifically, we do. Some of us. Oh, Shira got out. Here we go. Some of us. We have to come back in different layers, and some of us. It says actually Adam before Adam and Eve were. It says Adam himself was a male and female. One side of him was male, one side of him was female. And you can look in the Torah itself. Rashi, the foremost commentary, actually says that. So it's quite amazing to see that we each have a feminine and masculine side. It's just that for men, the masculine side is more dominant, and that's why biologically we came out as a man. For women, their feminine side is more dominant, but we each share each other's qualities, just like God does. God has a feminine side and a masculine side. For example, on Shabbat, God's feminine side, the Shekhinah, is what's alive, what's strong, what's dominant. And therefore we refer to God in the feminine on Shabbat. We're the Shabbat queen. Come, let us greet the bride. Because Shabbat is the attribute of the feminine side of God is more dominant. So depending on the day of the week, depending on the hour of the day, and depending on the holiday, there's different energies, female, male, and during reincarnations, we specifically come back in different lifetimes, both as a man or as a woman, and as different families, to be able to accomplish all the mitzvahs. Some in a more wealthy family, some generations in a more poor family, in order to be able to accomplish all the things of either giving charity or being able to receive and bring joy that way to others. There's all these different layers, and most of the times we don't see the full picture, but we know that there is a full picture.
Amazing, love it. And the other question I had
sure.
was just about talking about Rosh Hashanah, and people were saying, posting on Facebook, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, how she passed away in Rosh Hashanah, and how that's known in. I just wanted to confirm in Judaism that if a soul passes in Rosh Hashanah, then it's because they are highly elevated. I just wanted to hear your just confirmation on that, and also your baby being born on Rosh Hashanah. So whether a soul passes or is born on Rosh Hashanah, does that have anything to do with the Sadiq thing? I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
So I've heard of that also. I haven't had the time to check it up, so I don't say something without knowing. Since Rosh Hashanah, I turned my phone back on Sunday late night, and it's been nonstop since then. So I didn't have the time to confirm it. But if you, I don't doubt it. I just don't know all the Torah, but I don't doubt it that a tzaddik would be born or passes on Rosh Hashanah. It makes sense, but I don't know for sure. I don't know.
Okay, that's amazing. I'm so excited about your daughter and
Thank
your
you.
family in general. Okay,
Thank you,
thank you
thank you.
so much.
Of course. And more important than the day you were born is realizing what you could do with the soul you have. And I think that's really such an incredible point here, is that many times we search for, you know, the hour of the day and the right moment, but realize it's over here. The point is that every moment is the right moment, because every moment is connected with all the other moments, and every soul is connected with all the other souls, and every light is connected with all the other divine lights. If you look at things in an interconnected way, every moment is the most powerful. So really, Yom Kippur is actually connected to today, and today is connected to Passover. So it's an amazing thing to realize the power we have in every moment and every soul. And not only are we accomplishing for our soul, look at all the connectedness of our soul, what it's done in previous lifetime. If we realize, you know, it's an amazing idea, Maddie. Many of us look at previous generations to be giants in comparison to where we are, but we are we're the most important part of all previous generations. We may be midgets, but we're standing on their shoulders. We're like, many times we look at it like a chain, and we're at the bottom of the chain. But Judaism looks, the chain is actually building up. It's not going down. There's no, we're not degenerating in generations. We're actually growing higher and higher. And I could attest to that clearly, because that's exactly what we're saying. We're standing on the shoulders of everything that was accomplished in the past. We're not standing under them. We're standing on top of them. So therefore, we're fueled with their energy, and realizing that we're connected with our ancestry and with the soul's accomplishments in the past, that we could accomplish things that we maybe at times feel that we can't. And we do have the energy, the power from these different soul connectedness and these soul powers to be able to accomplish things. So it's to realize it's not so much about when you're born or when a person dies. It's more to realize of the power and the infinite capacity of the soul, because ultimately even the lowest soul is connected with the highest level of soul, and that highest level of soul is connected with God's infinity. So in truth, in one word, you are infinite. Your soul is infinite, and you just have to access it. And the Tanya is trying to teach us that we can access it, and that's going to be the whole thing of this love, is that it's natural. You don't have to do anything to earn it. It's not only on a certain day you were born, or only if you're born into a certain family are you able to privy to it. You're a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You have it. Yeah, so we're midgets standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's not my example. It's from the Midrash, from the commentaries on Torah. They use that often, saying that you can have a giant, but he can't see over the wall. What he needs to do, he has to put his little child or a midget, and even if it's just that little bit, it's making all the difference. So it says that our generation, we're standing on everything that was accomplished before, and all we have to do is just the final blow, the final access point to tip the scale and bring Mashiach. But this interconnectedness is really a beautiful idea, to realize it's all spiritual and we're all connected, first of all, to each other. And that's why love is to another should be something we possess, because we're all connected. Loving another person is really part of loving myself, because I'm connected to your soul and you're connected to my soul. Just like I love my arm and I feel pain when my arm is in pain, even though it's just my arm, it's not an essential limb like a heart or like a head, but it's part of me. And my head feels hurt when my arm is in pain. That's how we should feel with each other, because we are such a connected being. And Yaakov, to what you were saying before, that actually comes from Adam. We're all one from Adam, and therefore it should be both in the Jewish world, but even within in the non-Jewish world as well. We just have to see things from that perspective and that lens. Look, together we're solving the world's problems. This is so good. One more question. Within reincarnation, does the soul that fails to do what they are meant to accomplish, are they having to do it again until they get it right? And the things they got right, they never have to experience it again. So to answer the first part of your question, Yaakov, yes, we have to get it right. And many times, sometimes our whole 80, 90, 100 years on this world is really waiting for that one moment that in a previous lifetime it wasn't able to fulfill, and it's been waiting for that moment in this lifetime to fulfill. One of my greatest stories of the Rebbe that I'm sure some of you heard me share it already, but it's always worthy to reshare, is that there was a person who needed to ask the Rebbe a question. This was in the early 80s when a private audience was not available anymore. The Rebbe wasn't giving private audiences. And someone really had a very desperate question about his family that he needed to ask the Rebbe. But it was too hard to talk to the Rebbe in front of so many people and by services, and the Rebbe was very busy. So he stood outside the Rebbe's house in the morning before the Rebbe came to 770s to the Chabad headquarters. And while he was there, he wasn't a chassid. He didn't have a beard. He didn't look and dress the garb and the disguise of a chassid. But he stood by the Rebbe, and for 15 minutes, the Rebbe stood with him on the street and gave him advice. It was incredible. When the Rebbe left, the yeshiva boys over there rebuked this man and telling him, that's not how it's done here. You're so selfish. You're making the Rebbe stand on his feet for 15 minutes, and you're making everyone in 770, 1,000 people wait for services because of your selfish needs. That's just not how it's done. So they rebuked him, the yeshiva boys. And so this man felt really bad, and he penned a letter to the Rebbe saying an apology. First of all, Rebbe, thank you so much. Your advice, your 15 minutes was so important to me, and it's appreciated. Second of all, I apologize for taking up your time. I was educated. That's not how it's done. And the Rebbe's response was, first of all, I want to know who those yeshiva boys were. They had no permission being outside my house. They were supposed to be in the yeshiva studying. So I want to know who they were. Second of all, how dare they try to take away this opportunity from me? The Rebbe says, for all I know, the whole purpose of my soul's descent into this world was for those 15 minutes to help you. Powerful. The Rebbe is a man of 80 years old. What the Rebbe accomplished during that time, till 1982, was something you can't even describe. And yet the Rebbe is saying, perhaps the whole reason of my whole soul's descent was for those 15 minutes. So yeah, Yaakov, if we don't get it right the first time, we're sent back to get it right. Whether it means making a certain blessing in a certain way, whether it means having children, whether it means not having children, there's a certain reason of why our soul is living its purpose. And really, we could go on and on about this idea, but they have to get it right. And we still have to experience it again, because a soul needs constant growth and energy. It's not like, in business, it's not like you do it once and then you take your foot off the pedal. You got to keep on trucking. And the soul needs those constant fuel of mitzvah, so it still keeps the mitzvahs going. Yeah, Shira and Robin, you both have very similar birthdays. Both of those are very holy days. The 13th of Tishrei coming up next week is the day of the Rebbe Marash, his birthday. His yahrzeit. Thank you, Shira. And the first day of Sukkot, Robin. That's a beautiful day. Yeah, maybe Moshe asked that. I'm not sure. That sounds right. Okay, let's try to see. We have 5 more minutes. We'll try to squeeze in a little more of this Kabbalistic ideas. I hope I didn't blow you guys all the way with too much of this Kabbalah, but this is like some of the basics. So we'll keep it at that. So interconnectedness is what we're learning, that the Chachma of Asiya, which is the lowest world, is really connected with the Chachma of Atzilut, which is the highest world. Each sphere then is a window to a higher one, which is included within it as a veiled presence. This facilitates a connection from one end of a world to the other, and then it bridges the gap separating the worlds. Once the highest Sephirah of the highest world is unveiled, there is a direct connection with God's infinite presence. And that's a powerful idea that I was just trying to explain, that we have the power to connect all the way up the Sephirahs, all the way up to the highest world. And when you connect your soul with the highest Sephirah of the highest world, you're actually connected with God's infinite, because that's where God's infinite comes from. It's all from the highest world. That's an amazing idea. That's really, really powerful. So in one word, you are infinite. You have to work to access it, but you have that potential of infinity. It's an amazing idea. And by the way, just talking about childbirth is that exact, every now and then God gives us windows into the realm of infinity. What is infinite? Infinite is there's no limitations. We are by nature limited. But every now and then God gives us a window into the infinity to remind ourselves that we have that power. One of them is the creation. It's the only time we are gifted this power of creation is with the birth. It's really from nothing, creating something. You see it in many other parts. You see it also from a seed. It has the potential to grow, but it needs to first go into earth, become nothing, And then it turns into this beautiful tree, and it can produce to no end if it's nurtured in the right way. And the same is with childbirth. With the race, the human race can continue forever, but it's all part of this infinity process that we are privy to every now and then. And in the highest Sephirah of the highest world, the blessed infinite light shines literally. As the verse states, God founded the earth with Chachma. So the way God founded the earth was with Chachma, with this highest Sephirah of this highest world, called Chachma of Atzilut. And we're privy to it through our climbing up the ladder. And you have made them all with Chachma. That's a verse from Psalms from David. These verses imply that God's direct connection with the universe is through the vehicle of Chachma. Once God's light floods Chachma, it then spreads to all the other Sephirahs and to the rest of the universe. As we have learned, Chachma represents an inquisitiveness, an openness to the unknown. That is why Chachma alone is capable of acting as a receptacle to the infinite light of God. Anything other than absolute openness would serve as a finite structure that would be incompatible with the divine light. I'm going to stop with this. I just want to explain this idea. I know we only have 2 minutes left. I read it a little quickly. We'll stop with this, but I just really want to explain this powerful idea. What we're explaining is that Chachma, which is the highest Sephirah, is the original source of where God's infinite light is being accessed and then spreading to the other Sephirahs and spreading to the universe and the different worlds. But it comes from the highest realm, which is the Sephirah of Chachma. Chachma is the highest of the 10 Sephirahs. Like we've learned in English, Chachma means inquiring or inquisitiveness. It's opening yourself up. To be open, you have to be humble. Therefore, Chachma is the only channel for God's infinity to come into the world. Because in order to open yourself up to the infinite, you have to be open. In order to be open, you have to be humble. Chachma is that inquisitiveness outside of you that you're opening yourself up to. You're humbled. As when you're full of yourself, you can't be open. You're already filled up. You can't fill yourself with anything more. Chachma is the power of bitul, of humility, with something that you don't know yet. Chachma is, I want to learn it. I don't know it. You have to agree that you don't know it and open yourself up to finding it and search for it. And that's why Chachma is that powerful tool for God's infinite. So through accessing the different parts of and layers of ourselves, and by the way, and then we can get to God's infinity. Chachma, what is God's wisdom? God's Chachma, that's Torah. Torah study, we say many times in our prayer, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Talmud Torah stands together with all the other mitzvahs, which means if you put all the mitzvahs on one side of a scale and you will put Torah study on the other, Torah study will weigh or perhaps even outweigh all the other mitzvahs, because Torah study is the window into God's infinity. Torah is Chachma. Torah is God's wisdom. When you access through God's wisdom, the channel, the window is open to everything of God's infinity. And once you have that, then it opens the channels for everything else. How do we know when our Hebrew birthday is? Does it depend on the birthday and date? Yeah, February. So Maddie, I could text you in 5 minutes. You could actually just go on jewishnovato.com/birthday, and it would actually just plug in your birthday and it would tell you. But it's good to know your birthday is February 6th. Awesome. Is that your birthday, Maddie? Is that for real? Okay. Yeah, okay, it is awesome. So just go on jewishnovato.com/birthday. If not, just text me and I'll text you right back. 415-312-8385. You have my number, and I'll tell you in a few minutes. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Have an infinite week. And God willing, we'll see you again next Wednesday. Shana Tova, Gmar Chesima Tova. Just a reminder that Yom Kippur is on Sunday night. I'll be sending out an email with a detailed schedule, but it will be very hot on Yom Kippur. In Novato, it's supposed to be somewhere between 95 and 100 degrees, depending on what hour you're looking at the weather. More important than coming to shul is actually fasting. So if coming to shul would make you have to drink water, it's better to just fast at home. Even if you're spending most of the day at home and in bed, but you're fasting, you're actually accomplishing a greater mitzvah than pushing yourself to come to shul, but with the need of having to drink or eat. So anyway, Yom Kippur is Sunday night, Monday. It's important to be safe, but important to be healthy. So however you're going to observe Yom Kippur, we could talk about it. You could, I'll put out an email with the schedule, and make sure that the most important thing is you're doing your teshuvah process. And part of the teshuvah process is what God tells us in the Torah is to fast from Sunday evening around 6:40, I think, until 7:36 on Monday evening, which is the fast of Yom Kippur. And then next weekend we have Sukkot. We'll get some emails and information of some really, really exciting things we're doing for Sukkot. One of the really cool things is we are, because not many people could be in our Sukkah, even though we have a beautiful, massive Sukkah, we're going to be bringing a Sukkah to you. We're going to have what's called a Sukkah Mobile. We're building a Sukkah on a pickup truck, and we're going to be bringing it around town so everyone could have that opportunity to come into Sukkah, safe and sound. We'll bring it to you. You could go in isolated and yourself, but we could do the mitzvah together. All right, everyone, have a great week. Easy fast, and we'll see each other.